Hey friend, welcome back to the channel. Let's talk about reading today, and specifically how and why to read faster. So we'll talk about why being able to read faster is a useful skill to have in your pocket, and then I'll share 5 tips that I found really helpful for increasing my own reading speed so that I can absorb more stuff from the books that I read. So why bother reading fast? Like, isn't reading supposed to be one of those things that you take it slow, you enjoy the process, and you gain a lot of insight from the book? I think that's sometimes true, but it's not always. And I kind of think of it like riding a bike. So it's like sometimes when you're riding a bike, you want to really enjoy the journey and you want to smell the roses along the way. So you want to go at like 3 miles per hour so you can breathe it all in. But sometimes when you're riding a bike, your objective is to get from A to B. And let's say you're running late for work, for your lectures, you actually don't really care about smelling the roses on the way there. You just want to get there as quickly as possible. And I think of reading in the same way. Like if a book is really good, then I will read it slowly and take my time and take loads of notes throughout and like smell the roses on the way there. But the problem is that most books and most non-fiction books these days tend to be like big idea books, where it's like one central idea, and then the rest of the 400 pages of the book is just example after example after example, kind of bashing you over the head with examples to explain that one idea which you got from the introduction or from the first few chapters. And so in those cases, if I've got the main idea from the book, or if it's just not capturing my interest very much, often I will just blitz through the rest of the book. Yes, you could say that once you've got the main idea, then you might as well just abandon the book. And in general, I'm a very big fan of treating books less like hallowed objects and more like blog posts, which is like if you get halfway through a book or even 20% of the way through a book and it's not capturing your attention anymore, then it's fine, it's okay to abandon it. But even though theoretically I believe that and I will fully subscribe to that mindset, in real life, I often get a feeling of FOMO that I'm missing out on like some gold dust that might be sprinkled in the book, maybe halfway through or maybe 3/4 of the way through. And so in general, even if I've got the main idea from a book, I will prefer to just kind of blitz, read it very, very fast rather than abandon it completely. So reading faster helps with that. But if you know how to read faster, then your own default reading speed just improves without sacrificing any comprehension. And so for me now, it's actually reduced the time and emotional investment needed to read a book. Like if someone recommends a book to me, I know it's not going to take me 6 months to read the book. I know it'll take me a few hours to read the book because I can read pretty fast if I want to. And therefore, I'm far more likely to pick up the book that someone recommends and read it. And I've discovered so many good books and so many average books through that recommendation process. So that's why reading faster can sometimes be helpful. I'm not saying you should do it all the time. I'm not saying you should speed read like a productivity grease monkey. I'm saying it is a useful skill to have in your pocket for when you need it. All right, so tip number 1 for reading faster is to try and reduce subvocalization. And subvocalization is what it is when we've got that voice in our heads that is reading as we go along. This is controversial. Like if you look at the evidence behind speed reading and ways to improve your reading speed, there are some people that say that subvocalization is legit. There are some people say that it's not legit. I am not commenting on the evidence here. I'm commenting anecdotally. And anecdotally, I know that for me, when I'm reading faster, I read visually, like I see the words and I don't like sound them out in my head. Whereas when I'm reading slowly or in really enjoying a book, or if like I'm really savoring it, or if it's a very difficult topic, then I'll be doing the subvocalizing in my head. I'll be reading in my head as I go along. That obviously means that I read more slowly, but it does increase my comprehension. Anecdotally as well, when slow readers ask me how I read fast and I tell them the subvocalization thing, it blows their minds because they just think that that is just how you have to read. You have to read by having this voice going along in your head. In my opinion and in my experience, you can reduce that amount to increase your speed of reading. There is some evidence about this, like there are some studies where they do functional MRI scanning of people's brains and they have like fast readers and slow readers, and the fast readers have less activation in the bits of the brain that are responsible for speech. And that may be some evidence that reducing subvocalization is actually legit. But whatever the evidence says, I think that if you want to increase your reading speed, just try and reduce that voice in your head and kind of see what happens. It will start out very uncomfortable and you'll kind of be like blitzing through the text and not quite understanding it. But with enough practice, this will become second nature, and then you'll think, why do people read with a voice in their heads when it's just like so much faster to just look at the words and to not have the voice in your head? Point number 2, for reading faster, you actually don't have to read the whole page. You can kind of read a little bit in from the page on either side. And I picked up this tip from Tim Ferriss's The 4-Hour Workweek. He's also got a YouTube video about it. And I hadn't figured it out before, but when I started applying this, I did notice, anecdotally again, my own reading speed started to increase. And there are apparently speed readers around the world who swear by this method. Basically, the idea is that because when we look at a word, our peripheral vision can like see the words around the word. And so really like, normally we look at the very first word of a line, but then we're wasting peripheral vision because there's like empty space to the side. Whereas if we start like a little bit in and we kind of track our eyes, not from the start of the text to the end of the text, but like a little bit in, we can actually still see all the words and visually read, without wasting that space. So again, this is something that I find that if I'm actively trying to read faster, then I will do this. Normally, I don't remember. Normally, I just kind of read naturally. But if I'm actively trying to read faster, what I do is kind of shift my eyes from sort of the page, almost as if there's like a ruler on the end of the page. And so I'm only allowed to look in between those areas. And I found that that improves my reading speed. Again, this is somewhat controversial. Like there are some studies that show that this effect does not exist. Anecdotally for me and for Tim Ferriss and for Nelson Dellis, who's another guy who reads fast who I interviewed on my channel, it does sort of work. So maybe try it, see if it works for you. I find personally that it works for me. Thirdly, if you want to read faster, what you can do is you can take a pointer and you can just like kind of scan your finger across the page. This works a lot better when you're not reading on a screen or when you're not reading on a Kindle that has a touch screen. But if you're reading like a real book, the way it works is that because when our eyes move, they actually don't move in smooth. And in fact, like, so if you look at my eyes right now, I'm gonna try moving them smoothly from left to right. Back again. But it's actually impossible. So eyes move in terms of saccades. And so it's like a bang, 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 bang. The only way eyes can move smoothly is if they're tracking something. So if you now look at my eye, now it's moving smoothly because it's tracking my index finger. Whereas if I remove my index finger, there is no way I can like force my eyes to like move smoothly. And because our eyes move in that kind of saccadic way, usually when we're reading, we're not following smoothly one line to the next line to the next line. We're sort of kind of saccading back and forth, and that in theory wastes a lot of time while you're reading. So if you want to improve your reading, what you can do is you can take a finger and just kind of scan it along the line as fast as you want. And you kind of force your eye to follow your finger. And that means that you're not wasting any eye time in doing saccades back and forth between bits of the same line. I haven't found any studies that talk about this in depth, but there's this dude called Howard Berg, who is like, you know, world record holder for speed reading. And he says that just by using a pointer, you can increase your reading speed by 10 to 20%. So I think that's pretty good. Point number 4, something I find helpful is to kind of gamify the whole reading faster thing. So normally when I'm reading and I'm reading a good book, like I said, I will read slowly, I'll take my time, I'll take notes, all of that kind of stuff. But if it gets to a point where I'm losing interest in a book, or if it's a fiction book and there's just loads of description that I don't want to read about because I'm just so engrossed in the storyline, or if I just want to kind of blitz through the rest of the book, I will kind of treat it as a bit of a game for myself to see how quickly I can read without sacrificing too much of my comprehension. And especially with non-fiction books, what I do is that I think to myself, okay, this book's getting boring now. Let me turn this into a game, and I'm gonna see how quickly I can read while still understanding the gist of the chapter. In general, I'm a big fan of gamifying all of the different components of my life because it just makes life more interesting, and it means that skill acquisition, like learning new stuff, just becomes so much more fun when you turn it into a little game that you play with yourself. That sounds weird. And finally, if you want to take in more from what you're reading, this is not really a tip for reading faster, but it's still useful. It's actually to write a summary or a review of the book that you've just read. If I'm trying to speed read, I will do this, but I've also started doing this with all of the fiction and non-fiction books that I'm reading. And the easiest way I've found to take these notes from books after I've read them is by using Notion, who are very kindly sponsoring this video. If you guys haven't heard, Notion is like my favorite app in the world, and I use it for absolutely everything from like my notes for medical school, to teaching assignments, to tracking my gym workouts, to handling all of the elements of this YouTube channel, to working with my team, and also recently to take books from all the notes that I've ever read. So I've actually got 2 different templates for this. I have a fiction template and a non-fiction template. They're gonna be linked in the video description so you can duplicate them into your own workspace. By the way, Notion is completely free. So if you haven't got an account, you should sign up for one, link in the video description. And so within my book notes database, let's take, for example, Show Your Work by Austin Kleon. This is one I've taken very seriously. This is a non-fiction book. And so what I've got is, I have the book in 3 sentences, impressions, who should read it, how the book changed me, and my top 3 quotes. And that is like the minimum that I will do for every book that I read. And if I'm feeling particularly keen, I will do like a whole summary and notes about the book, which I am working on slowly publishing to my website. And I think just doing this, even just doing like the book in 3 sentences, really helps me engage with something, especially if it's a book that I've speed read or like read really fast and I've got the main idea. It forces me to really think, okay, have I actually understood what this book is about? And if not, I'll just open it up on Kindle and just kind of blitz through it again to find out, okay, what was the key point here and can I put it into my own words? And for fiction books, I've got another template that has kind of what it's about, how I discovered it, and then just some general thoughts on the book. Again, I'm working on uploading these to my website so I can have a nice list of all the books I've ever read, including reviews and ratings and notes and summaries and all that good stuff. So if you want to read faster, I'd highly recommend you also take notes and summaries of the books that you've read after the fact, so that you can test your understanding of them and do some active recall and spaced repetition on that. And as I said, Notion is my favorite way of doing this. Free templates, free download, everything linked in the video description. If you like this video, you might like to check out the video over here, which is called How I Remember Everything That I Read, which is about the 7 different levels of this whole thing about taking notes from books. This, what we've talked about, is about level 5, but there are lots of levels before and a couple of levels after, so you should definitely check out that video. Click over here. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video. Bye-bye.